Crystalis for the NES was developed by SNK in 1990, a company known for their hardware development of the Neo Geo consoles and handhelds, as well as their various games. Crystalis is one of the predecessors of narrative video games. The story is a sci-fi thread in which your protagonist wakes up from stasis in a small town with very little idea of who he is or what he should be doing. Eventually, you find out that the world of the game suffered from an apocalyptic breakdown due to the misuse of technology. The technology now rules the world, and the protagonist must break the power held by a techno-magical empire. The story plays out in balance with gameplay. In the city of Portoa, you see the narrative of Crystalis play out in a very typical way for the game, in which you talk to a queen and then also talk to the fortune teller of the city. And playing through the narrative, you find out that it is one and the same person. This takes a little time to figure out for the player, but once the player does have it figured out, it's simple to go between the two. And on hindsight, you realize that the queen is coming over here and then telling the fortune that you will be able to go talk to the queen. And of course, she obviously has a secret way back and forth between the two areas. The thing that I like about this is not only do you get to think critically and more beyond just fighting and getting experience, but it also starts to develop your relationship as the protagonist between the people called the wise men, because you'll find out that this lady is neither the queen of Portoa exactly. She's neither a fortune teller, but one of the wise men that guide the protagonist on his journey. Eventually, the relationship between you and the Queen of Portoa leads to a point where you've actually got to use more trickery as the protagonist. If you approach this guard, he will keep you from entering unless you go to the fortune teller and get her to say that the way is open. But now we want to see what is in the door that is being guarded in the queen's room. And so, using the hero's usual trickery, he takes a spell he's learned earlier, paralyzes this guard, goes in, and now has access to this secret passage that the fortune teller has been using. Further exploration after acquiring a certain weapon will allow you as the player to take the protagonist even further and eventually reveal the queen and fortune teller's true identity as the wise woman. And so all this time, interestingly enough, earlier you fought against a wise man and showed him how strong you were in order to go on and progress into the game. But now you're actually proving to this female wise man that you have the brains to be the hero as well. And so, in passing kind of her test of finding this secret passage, now you get to go on to the next challenge, which will take you to the weapon that you need in order to further explore her secret area. So that's just a little peek into some of the narrative acts. The narrative's passive. It's not reading screens of text. It is the interactions between you and the other characters that unfold the story. Fighting in Crystalis is mainly the same hack-and-slash style throughout the game, and in order to proceed in many levels, the experience gained through fighting is important for progressing further into the plot. This aspect can become slightly repetitive, but stays within reason for keeping my attention. A certain amount of level grinding is even enjoyable as an excuse to listen to the themes of this game's incredible soundtrack. When the game was ported to the Game Boy Color, the loss of the original soundtrack was the largest disappointment of seeing the game go handheld. But fighting isn't the only challenge offered in Crystalis. In Towns, some of the best parts of the gameplay come from the role of your protagonist as trickster. You'll dress as an Amazonite woman, a rabbit, a fortune teller, and a queen, all in order to gain essential intelligence and gain new skills. Let's look at an example of the use of disguise in Crystalis and its impact on gameplay and the overall story. Coming to the town of Amazonas, a little wordplay on Amazon, you notice that all of the villagers are women, and they react to you as a male, at least your shape of a male, as loathsome and undesirable. You can't even get into certain places with this gender allocation as male. And so, to get past the challenge that is needing to talk to the queen, you use the change magic. And here, this is where I would need to take the form of a young lady. Upon coming into town as a girl, I now will be received much differently. I will receive invitations to stay in the town. I'll get different kinds of information, hints as to what to do next. And now I'll be able to see the queen as I was wanting to before. And this entire play on gender really says a lot about just image. I mean, kids are playing this, and yet they're getting these messages about how people react to gender. Of course, the hero hasn't literally changed gender, it's just an image, and yet it's enough to get him access into this special town. Another interesting aspect of Crystalis is its sensitivity towards place and environment and the effects that has upon the protagonist's adventure. And so if I go out in this swamp, I'm taking damage. So to fix that problem, I then need to go and put on a gas mask that I got from an earlier event. As soon as I do that, I'm at least able to go out into this swamp protected. Another challenge that I'll run into, however, is not being able to fight enemies without certain weapons equipped. Trying to fight this bug with a Sword of Wind won't work. So the challenge is to, in the plot of the game, to find the Sword of Fire. And upon finding that sword, no problem, I can get rid of that enemy. So Crystalis is very aware of its environmental impact on the player. At the bottom of the screen, you get a lot of information that may seem foreign at first, but you quickly learn what everything means. The life bar, you can see that if I get hit, that increasingly builds up, and then I need to find a way to heal. Also at the bottom of the screen, you can tell that this character is at level 13. You have the money below that, the magic points gauge, the experience gauge, knowing how many points you have to get to the next level. This is actually probably one of the best places for leveling up in the game because of all these guards that collect around you. It's a little faster to build up. You can, the math being used, I remember being a kid and trying to figure out how far I had to go and having to use some pretty good arithmetic just to figure out how far I had to go to the next level. The game is very clear about what's going on at all times. When I am going to go up a level, it will let me know with a message. And that's pretty important because level is what is going to help you go forward in the game. The weapons of the game are built around 4 swords. Not only do you collect the swords at certain points, but you also collect their enhancements. There's 2 different enhancements. With the sword alone, you can build up to level 1. With the ball, for each sword, you can build up to level 2. And for the bracelet, you can build up to level 3. The Sword of Wind, the Sword of Fire, the Sword of Water, and the Sword of Thunder all work differently in different areas. They also have different tactical advantages. For example, if I use the Sword of Wind, then I can build up for a front blast, so that I can cover any enemies that are simply out in front of me. If I use the Sword of Water, I can use a different tactical advantage in which I will actually attack all the enemies that are surrounding me. And so any player has to consider what is the best weapon to use at the time. And with the environmental considerations as well, it may be best to use the Sword of Water with its surrounding attack, but the enemies may not, they may be resistant to water. So the player's constantly having to balance all of these items and consider what is the best choice to make. It keeps the game engaging. It doesn't get boring that way. You can hear the clanks that tell you right there, for example, that fire is not going to work against these enemies. So it would be great if I could bang them around like that, but I can't. I've got to use something else.
Alright, so that's Crystalis for the NES. A great game, really impacted my childhood, and I followed playing Crystalis with great games such as Secret of Mana, the Final Fantasy series, and other games now that continue to shape the way I think of video games as critical thinking tools. I hope you got something from this review. My reviews get better, and I get to do some more of them.